and welcome. Thank you for being here. So we are super excited to have you here. My name is Majora Carter, and welcome to another awesome Energy Futures webinar. I'm the Senior Program Director for Community Regeneration here at Groundswell, and I'm moderating today's conversation. So the Energy Futures 2021 webinar series has a foundation in research findings from the Lift Solar Everywhere initiative that show the value of prioritizing the community, its vision, and its values in shaping clean energy programs that serve people and communities with low and moderate incomes. Today, we'll discuss the vital role of resiliency hubs that makes use of solar and storage in creating resilient communities that work for everyone. This will include discussion about the how-to, the models, financing approaches, and regulatory considerations that enable a shift to more resilient and equitable clean energy futures. We would love to hear your questions. If you have any questions for any of our panelists on the webinar today, please submit them in the comment section. If you're joining us on Facebook Live, YouTube Live, LinkedIn, or Twitter, feel free to drop your questions in the comments. We'll be able to respond to you. A video of this webinar will be available on Groundswell's Ground Truth site later on today. And we encourage you to share the recording with anyone you know who wants to learn more about resilience and energy equity. With that, I am excited to introduce a great group of panelists who will be speaking on the webinar today. First, Brad Boston, founder of SunCatch Energy. Brad leverages his experience as a fourth-generation electrical contractor to help SunCatch set itself apart by extending training opportunities to underemployed communities in order to encourage equitable growth in the energy sector. We're also joined by Michael Simmons, an accredited lead green associate who has played a central role in understanding how to meet community needs through a resiliency hub at Empowerment Temple AME Church in Baltimore, Maryland. Since its very first service on Easter Sunday in the year 2000, it's quickly grown in size and service and gives back to the surrounding community through education and community programs. And finally, I'd like to welcome Pastor Billy Humphrey, who's the founder and CEO of City of Refuge, Baltimore. For 20 years, City of Refuge has been committed to developing programs centered on intentional assistance and meaningful relationships that are accessible to everyone in the Baltimore community, regardless of their stage of life or background. And you can view their full bios at Ground Truth on groundtruth.groundswell.org/webinars. So first, I'm going to answer the first question. What is a resiliency hub? So resiliency hubs include solar and energy storage connected through a microgrid and provide essential services, including keeping the lights on and the heat on, and some places to get cooled down, when the temperature is really up and when the power goes out. And they should be developed in close collaboration with the people and the neighborhoods that they serve. So with that, now I'm going to move to the panel. So first we're going to start with Brad, and then we're going to hear some insights from Brother Mike and Pastor Billy as well. So Brad, SunCatch heavily emphasizes employment opportunities for underemployed communities. Why was that so important to you? Did that become a part of your business model?
I was blessed having grown up in a family of contractors. And within the family business, regular operations, my grandfather, he was always about extending second chances to people.
Mm-hmm.
So in my youth,
So what was your family business?
McCann Sons Electric.
Okay.
Yeah, in Los Angeles, California. I actually started McKay Electric in New Orleans, Louisiana.
Okay.
My grandfather moved to California and he continued the family business out there along with an uncle. Okay. And in my youth, we used to wonder, why do we have to work with these characters? As a kid, you really don't see, what was really going on. But, as you mature, you find out that there's a lot of people out here who are just looking for the door to open and are willing and waiting. And, I grew up with that mission and I've incorporated it into my business. It was something we were doing before we even had the term workforce development.
Mm.
So I'm really doing what we always did. And you find people that are very appreciative. It may not work for everyone, but while we're out here advancing, we need to pull as many people with us as we can.
Mm. Very true. And so another question for Brother Mike. You spent 12 years as a code enforcement inspector for Baltimore's housing department. How did that experience help you look at solar the way that you do and how it can help support your community?
Well, when you're in citizens' homes, or what we call constituent complaints, you get to see some of the things that on the ground, where you see the need for heating, electric, and so on. So as you hear about and read about the different things that occur in this community, especially hurricanes, disasters, so those are the things that if you're just a human being and you see the needs of the community on a day-to-day basis, you kind of grow towards that, similar to what Brad is saying about an experience of a day-to-day process, that you see people in need and your heart moves out to them. So then you have a church such as Empowerment Temple, who's always looking to assist the community with electric or utility needs, food, etc. So that's an outreach or extension of what we were doing in the community. So I've just, as working on a day-to-day basis, I just saw the need. And then, of course, in the learning process, you learn more and more each day. I decided to take up and look at it and see exactly what was going on as far as the overall need for the community to be able to pay utilities, et cetera. So that's an outgrowth where we have.
Right. So a connection to, the everyday, lived experiences of people within their community and how this can help them. Okay, cool. And so Pastor Billy, why is it so important for you to consider the environment in your work within the community?
Well, we're on the south side of Baltimore here, and I mean, it's a matter of equity, right? Environmental equity, I think, is critical. Poorer communities that have been kind of environmentally dumped on, and so the idea of bringing clean energy to a otherwise disadvantaged community is just one more bite out of that elephant, right? How do you eat an elephant of clean energy and a healthier environment, one bite at a time? And so every solar panel that goes up is one more bite to ending that inequity, but also moving our whole nation, our whole city to cleaner energy and a more green environment, which I think is just healthy for all of us.
Okay. Now we're going to go back down. So since we're ended with you, Pastor Billy, tell us a little bit about the project that you're working on.
Sure. So we're a community-based organization and a resiliency hub with Baltimore City here in South Baltimore. And, the idea of having solar panel with battery backup, which would allow us to just on the battery alone, I think, function for 72 hours is critical in case of a mass power outage. It allows us to continue to keep food healthy and refrigerated and taken care of so that we're better equipped to serve people. But it also allows us to keep the heat and air conditioning on days like, oftentimes the most extreme weather or the most extreme emergency situations happen as a result of extreme weather, right? Whether it's a heat wave or hurricane season or in the extreme cold in which there's power outages due to ice or whatnot. So this allows us to continue to provide respond to what we in Baltimore City call the code blue and code red being hot days, code blue being cold days, we'll continue to be able to serve people in those kind of emergency management situations, but we'll also be able to continue to provide food. And in the worst case scenario, maybe, I don't think this is a stretch, but I think we'd even be able to keep people's medicines refrigerated, right? Mass power.
Absolutely.
These are all, I think, practical needs that are best met by a community-based partner, whether that's Empowerment Temple or City Refuge or any of the other resiliency hubs throughout our city. And they also become that kind of primary connector point between us and government and even and the residents whom we serve on a daily basis. So yeah, it's very practical. Our project is such that we just acquired a building December 30th of 2020. There's a big step in the right direction, but it's a 50,000 square foot, almost 50,000 square foot building. And so the idea to put battery backup to be able to continue to keep our commercial refrigeration as well as some lights on and to continue to make impact is just is huge. And the pandemic has been a great example of that, right? I mean, I guess that was our first test run as resiliency hubs. How did we respond to the pandemic?
And how did you respond to the pandemic? And how did Resiliency Hubs help you do that?
Great question. For us, I mean, obviously the most immediate need in our community being a community that has more poverty rates and is also in a food desert. We were able to step up and just we've seen immediate increase as people were losing their jobs, especially in the service-based industry. Our demand just went enormous. So prior to the pandemic, a couple of quick examples. Prior to the pandemic, we were serving 250 to 300 prepared meals a week. And at the height of the pandemic, we were serving as many as 4,000 prepared meals in a week. We started serving 7 days a week because all of the schools shut down and we're not serving children. And then as things started to reopen, we, even to this day, are now serving 1,400 to 1,600 prepared meals a week, Monday to Friday. So the need is still high. Our food pantry quadrupled in the number of households we distribute food to. But being a resiliency hub, we were able to tap in to some fresh produce. And so we've become a fresh produce distribution center through the city, which is really good because, fresh produce is something that our residents here in this part of South Baltimore don't have easy access to, being a food desert. You'd have to travel. If you don't have an automobile or your own transportation, you would have to, and public transportation would take you about an hour to get to the local grocery store. So you imagine coming back with your groceries, but you can walk to us or take public transportation. That's a lot faster. And so we were delighted to get those needs out.
Wow. Okay. So one thing I forgot to mention at the top of the hour was that, I'm really hoping that this is a conversation among us because, y'all are working in the great city of Baltimore and you have actually worked together or at least know of each other's work or serving, all the type of people that are actually in need, of and desiring of a place like Resiliency Hubs or just the work that's been happening with what you've been doing. So I'd love to hear a little bit more and thank you, Brad, for because I heard you just pop in and say absolutely. So you knew the deal before, but so if any of you have anything to pop in and say as you're talking, feel free.
Okay. In 2020, similar to city of Pastor Billy's church, we at Empowerment Temple did the same thing as far as thousands of meals. Every week we were giving out over 400 baskets of food, and we also had two major incidents in the Northwest Corridor, which is the Park Heights, or what we call Central Park Heights, which the citizens know of. In August of 2020, we had 4 houses blow up due to a gas leak. And when we say they blew up, they are now level. They're just a lot that had been filled in, and we had several people killed. So we were within 3 blocks of the major incident. And then, of course, considering the magnitude of the explosion, it shook that whole Northwest corridor, and it was heard quite a number of miles away. So we were the center for the community for about 3 weeks, maybe a little bit longer. Then in October 2020, we had another incident about 3 miles away from us, which was a similar incident at an apartment building. And that happened on a Sunday evening. So we ended up being utilized in that Northwest corridor as a place where police and fire plus the citizens could regroup. They knew where they could receive assistance from the Emergency Management Services of Baltimore City. So, we're vital when you have a resiliency hub and sustainability systems, such as what Pastor Billy is saying, when you do the red and blue code situations. Also, with our 6 3/4 acres, we have about 50,000, maybe a little bit more, square feet of space outside of our sanctuary, because we have 3 buildings that we use to store the water and the other items that the city gives us to help in those particular emergencies. So, those are things in reference to the need of that community. As we go forward on the solar side, that'll mean that we'll be able to supply some of not only our energy as the utility bills being reduced, but also be able to pass that on through the microgrid network to assist the persons in that community. And of course, we'll have to qualify those who have the need for that. But the solar energy and everyone is pretty much connected to the grid. But the question is, who is going to be billed by the grid? So the utility companies will bill you under the normal circumstances. But once we have the solar power generators up and running, there'll be an offset to those who qualify as far as income is concerned. So that'll be a great help in that community itself. And that goes for the whole city of Baltimore.
So help me understand. So the billing issue, how does that, so who gets?
Well, when you have community solar, which Groundswell is the lead company on the community solar. If a person has a utility bill, let's say, and they are not tied to any particular group, let's say their utility bill is $100 a month. Well, we're generating energy under that particular banner, then some of that can be offset. Let's say it'd be a savings of $25. Well, there's always a savings, and that's the purpose of that.
Right.
Groundswell has other aspects in reference to the same thing that'll help the community. So persons have to qualify. Now, if you're making $100,000 a year, you shouldn't be. But if you fall below the median income, and as Pastor Billy knows, you have people who live in day to day, make $100 a day and make no money the rest of the week. So you're talking about folks who fall well below the median income structure, what we would call now the poverty line. And so you'll be, they have to have power, and they have to have the utilities available to them. So we're all in that mix to help assist those who fall below the median income threshold. So that's how that's how that energy will be used in any community solar project. So Groundswell is, I think, has 5 locations now in the city that they're affiliated with in Baltimore. So we'll be able to help a number of people in reference to that. And then that's a great saving if you look at an average sales of $100 and maybe you save 25 on it or more, according to the income and the spread of the energy.
Yeah, I know we're going to be studying another at least 30 new locations. So the hope is that they'll be all over the place. But I have a question for all of you. Considering like everything that you said so far, sounds like this is such a smart idea. I think for someone who's just listening in, who doesn't really, isn't like a big, green person or whatever, it's just like, so if this is such a good idea, and if it's actually helping that many people save money, support the environment, why doesn't this happen more often and all over the place? Why is this such a rarefied thing?
I'll take that one. And first, I would like to express my appreciation to the Maryland Energy Administration and the city of Baltimore. We have a little secret going on out here. We're leading the nation in resiliency hubs.
Yep.
We're blowing everybody else out.
Yep.
They have to catch up to us. We love to see it happen. They are really leading this charge and getting resiliency hubs out in the state of Maryland, and Baltimore has really bitten down on it, and we're on a roll. Let me define what a resiliency hub really is. It's a nebulous word when you hear resiliency. What resiliency means is that when the lights go out, whether it's a disaster, man-made, environmental, there are facilities in your community that will have the lights on, they will have air conditioning, and they will have heating. You'll also have food stocks. So these hubs are in communities that are in extreme need. If the power goes out, what do people do? We could have a 7-day outage. You go to that hub and you'll find what you need to sustain yourself. In a worst case scenario, the city would deliver supplies to these hubs and keep them in operation during that crisis. You'd have food coming in, you'd have water coming in, and most importantly, your pharmaceutical medication that you can't get when the drugstore closes, it would be stocked at this resiliency hub. So it's, really a way to keep people fed, keep them warm, keep them cool, and keep them alive.
Right. So that's intense, right? And it literally could be the difference between a life or death experience. Someone just wrote into the chat that, obviously, if we recall, I guess it felt like last winter, but Texas's outages lasted for 10 whole days.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. We would be the key people we would take up that slack when that system falls down because of the solar and the storage batteries. We could assist the folks in the minimal things, such as charging up your cell phones, anything that you need electricity, even your handicap walkers. You could come and get that charged up, fully charged, because when you have solar, the sun is out even when it's cloudy. So we're generating energy. Then we have the storage battery, which charges up so much wattage, and then you can feed it out to those in need. So.
Brother Mike, you touched on something very important I left out, and that's medical devices.
Yeah.
Some people need a Cpap machine to sleep. Days of not having that Cpap machine can lead to critical health issues. And these outlets at the Resiliency Hub are able to power those.
And your equipment today is moving towards things such as even with a car. So at some point we'll have, as we move forward, we'll have the ability to have an EVC charger. So as we move forward, when you say resiliency, this is not just a static situation. It's developing as we go forward in reference to the current technology and the mood of advancing the population, the culture, and the day-to-day living standards of the citizens in the United States, and especially in Baltimore. So you'll be able, at some point, once we build all those things in, you'll be able to gain and be able to survive minimally, but you'll be able to make it until the full thing goes up. And God forbid if we have any issue such as, and as Brad mentioned, in the resiliency agreement, And God forbid, and we're in times where we talk about terrorists, etc. We have domestic and foreign people. They may do something to the grid and cause an issue, which, you know, you may have to hunker down. So you can come to the Resiliency Hub that's local, close to your residency, and be assisted with medical aid and so on. And then, of course, all your emergency authority, police, fire, EMT, and everything will be situated right there, because they would be down as well in some instances. So.
Wow.
And I think in addition to the emergency preparedness that a resiliency hub offers to communities, I would also add that not only are we preparing ourselves for the emergency, but in the meantime, we are still addressing matters of clean energy, sustainability, and really, I think, as Michael shared, this idea of impacting residents, even if we could impact some, right? He was talking about that $25 savings in a month. But quite honestly, for a family that is living, if we're going to use that below the federal poverty level or living on the margins, or wherever, of income, surviving, that's really what resiliency is. But that $25 could pay for their prescription.
Yeah.
Or it could pay for their water, right? I mean, but those are some, offsets that I think both impact, for instance, us, City of Refuge, as a community-based organization and our sustainability, but it also impacts those residents we're serving, that mesh. So I think there's kind of like this immediate benefit, but then there is also this long-term benefit that says, hey, we're ready for, I remember when I signed up to be a resiliency hub, I thought to myself, I don't know that we're going to have too many natural disasters in Baltimore. And a global pandemic comes, right? 6 months later, less than 6 months later. And so I understand the value and impact of the Resiliency Hub model now more than I ever thought the day I said, yeah, I'll do it. We'll do it. And we were already doing the kinds of things that they were looking for, but the benefit is just continuing to increase. And I don't want us to miss the sustainability factor. Another one of those big words, resiliency, is sustainability. But for the people we're serving, it's survival. I own a generator. It's a gas-powered generator. If my power went out, I'll start my generator. But many of the families that we serve, the households we serve, do not. And so and if they do not have a car, they can't go start their engine and charge their battery on their cell phone, as Michael was sharing. That is so very practical. But when you're talking about survival and knowing what's next, what's coming, these things become very practical and relevant for survival. And so I think that's part, and we're not even talking about the bigger picture stuff of clean energy and equity in poor communities, the cost of energy as a whole and how it impacts people in poverty. We could go into that stuff too, right? I mean, that's the other side of this that is so exciting to me.
Well, I think there's there's some scratching on one of our. And my dogs are out, so I don't think those are my puppies. But I hear something. But just in case, we can mute ourselves just when we're not talking. But in the meantime, actually, Pastor Billy, kind of let's go there, because right now what we're talking about is like sort of big picture what resiliency hubs are. And yes, shout out to the state of Maryland for like putting y'all up on the map and really giving you something to do. But it is about the people, right? Whether it's their ability to save a little bit on their electricity bill, have an opportunity, to store their medicine, or, charge their phone, or just get warm or cool, depending on what's needed. I'm sort of curious, just how much do you think that the folks that we're serving as we do this work, is there like an understanding of like what's actually happening, in the environment around them? Because, honestly, there's like this I think preconception that or even misconception actually, that, that the environment is this thing that kind of belongs to like white people. preferably rich ones, right? And it's almost as if we didn't, people of color, have no real understanding of what that actually means. And, from what I'm hearing, it's just that maybe they talk about it in different phrases, but they know that something's up. And I was just curious, and I know, and Pastor Billy, like, I recognize you're not a person of color, but I appreciate, your work in helping, and really being supportive of the communities that you do serve. And so I'm including you in this as well, when we were talking about the constituents that we serve in many of the communities. The low and moderate income people are, people of color that are often not considered, a part or even interested, in the environment. And I'm sort of curious, like, what your observations and conversations, have been with folks around being a part of essentially what is, a clean energy future.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's a very relevant conversation. It maybe isn't talked about in the same way. So, first of all, solar power in particular is very cost prohibitive for people in poverty, and people of color are disproportionately in poverty. I grew up in poverty. I got out. I tell everybody I borrowed my way out. But I went to college, right? But I believe that in matters of the environment do matter to people in poverty. They might talk about it differently. One of the ways I see it, they talk about, okay, is there lead and mold in our house? What do my alleys look like, and are they clean? Is the trash picked up? Does, in this case, the city really recycle when I put it in those yellow bins or not? That's probably, I would say, more the conversation that's happening. There are definitely others that are talking about clean air, and there are people that are talking about fossil fuels, and which go to clean air, right? I mean, so those conversations do happen, but most environmental issues, in my opinion, in my experience, are more about those kind of like what's right in front of me. All of those matter, right? They all matter to our environmental health across the board. And so while most people might be talking about the rats and mice and critters that are running around and how that impacts, but they're talking about how that's impacting, right? Air quality, asthma, all of these things impact. I mean, in South Baltimore, we have, I think, more incinerators than anywhere else in Baltimore. Our air is being impacted by the burning of trash or medical waste or other things that are just being burnt and released into the atmosphere. And I know they filter it and all that, but I mean, there's no way they're catching it all. So these are some of the, I think, injustices I like that are impacting poorer communities. I often say that trash doesn't stay in the alleys of rich white neighborhoods like it does in the alleys of poor communities, and that could be poor white, poor brown, poor black, any poor communities, and of course disproportionately they are people of color, and that's just unacceptable. That is not okay. And this larger impact of Baltimore City and the state of Maryland and in targeting communities that are otherwise impacted disproportionately, I think is one way to try to get us to a more equitable place. I don't think this is going to answer it all. We've got a long way to go, but
Pastor Billy, I'm
going to people that would take so
agree with you.
Can afford it.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with you, and just giving the listeners and viewers a little. In the city of Baltimore, this crosses into all areas of the city when we talk about environment. And part of what I did over the years was being part of the environmental enforcement. I saw it in every community, and of course, as you said, as you questioned, Marjorie. The more affluent community gets looked at because their representation. For instance, the city council or aldermen or whatever you may call them, they look at it and they complain more. I was part of that whole enforcement, but we see it all over. Lead paint in properties, and considering how old Baltimore is, Baltimore's 200 plus years old. Lead paint wasn't taken out of mass production until 1977. So you think about a lot of property in itself, and just in the land and in the soil and so on. So those issues will come about. One of the things we always did in the city, as far as the city, was trying to keep up with that. And then, of course, a city that's trying to move from being an old city that's dilapidated and having issues with infrastructure, moving to a new city in the new modern world. There's a transition. So we do have to assist those in the low to moderate, what they call low to moderate, or the lower income community. But I found that most people in the houses that I inspected, and especially women, regardless to their ethnicity, they were always looking for us to assist them so that they could make a better life for their children. And so when I would walk in houses, didn't matter black, white, green, whatever the nationality, they were always wanting their children and wanting to live in better conditions. And as Pastor Billy mentioned, you run into mold, you run into deferred paint, which is where you have lead, you have all the infestations in the alleys, and you have some people coming from other areas, because when we talk about outside of Baltimore, coming into areas such as where Pastor Billy is, and the Southward Ordnance Road, and he knows what I'm talking about, Curtis Pennington Avenue, all down in that area. They just they rehabbing a house up in one area and bring all the stuff, that the contractor bring the stuff down and drop it in the area off the road. And then, of course, the family doesn't know what to do. That's an educational thing. So, as we are doing right now, this is education. And the more outreach that we, as a church and as people in the community, reach out more and interact and give the citizens more information and give them the resources that they have, and that these resources are available to get the property cleaned up. We should go forward on it. One thing that we have, and just one little point, we do have a little group at the church, and I will probably extend it to Pastor Billy, called the Green Ambassadors. And we were looking at the recycling, et cetera, and educating our parishioners in reference to that. So we, as we're coming out of the pandemic, we're going to reconstitute that, because, of course, the pandemic just shut everything down. So the Green Ambassadors talk about all of these particular arenas in reference to the education of the parishioners in the church and outreach in the community, what services are available, help clean your alley, et cetera, and how you go about it.
Awesome. So there was that education component that'll pick up again, because it's true. Like, in that regard, knowledge really is power, because folks, I get it. Folks can feel like really powerless about what to do in their community, because there is this assumption that, especially if you're living in a low income community, that no one's really looking out for you, which in some cases, unfortunately, can be. It's not only a perception. I feel like it is true. More affluent communities don't have the problems in their alleys as much as we do. So I get that. But I'm also, going to you, Brad, a big focus on your work, has been workforce development. And what has been, sort of like part of your thinking around developing that? Because it sounds to me like there's almost an expectation that, people who feel like they've got, a financial stake, in the improvement of their environment will be a part of it. And so can you talk a little bit more about that? No, we can't hear you.
Looking at the solar industry, or the alternative energy industry right now, people in low and moderate income neighborhoods may not have the money to invest in Tesla 10 years ago. However, if they find the time to invest in themselves, they'll find that their personal return is the same as putting your money in one of these companies that go up to the moon. You know, if this is, you know, construction work is not easy work.
Mm-mm.
You're out in the elements. It can be hot. It can be cold. It can be wet. You know, if you find that you have the ability and the desire to work in that environment, you know, the sky is the limit. And especially in industry that's at the ground level. You know, we really still are at the beginning of this. It is just unfolding and improving year over year. Like I tell guys and gals, you know, if you want to buy your own house in 5 years, this is what you need to get into. You know, you want to get into a job that will be able to provide for you for the future without interruption. You can't be outsourced. You know, no special robots are going to come along and do this work. Construction is going to be done by people.
Mm-hmm.
And people in these LMI communities, this is just a great opportunity to move yourself up.
Mm. So how would you, okay, so I'm, you know, from, let's say, Oliver neighborhood in Baltimore or some other neighborhood. And so I'm want to get more interested in and involved, you know, in the solar industry, maybe as a, you know, just to learn more about it and get some training and then maybe even own my own business. What advice would you give that person?
I would say get on the phone and just start calling people. There is a shortage of workers like you could not imagine.
Really?
I mean, it's just everybody needs somebody. You know, they say there's a shortage of workers in the general economy,
Mm-hmm.
within the solar field and construction in general.
Huh.
You know, construction is something that this country largely abandoned in the last 30 years. You know, as folks graduated through the economy, they decided that they didn't want their kids to work as hard as they did.
Mm-hmm.
So these jobs are here, they're available. There's employers everywhere who need workers. And, you know, it's not like people may say, you know, solar is a white business. How am I going to get into it? When you need help, you need help.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we are right now.
Mm. And well, first of all, I do
And
want
to,
because I have, but do you, if any of you guys out there have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments and we'll be glad to answer them. But I have a follow-up question to that, Brad. So yes, I know people are thinking, yes, there's like, for people of color, in particular Black folks, there's less access to capital to start these businesses and maybe even just in particular to start them. But is there an opportunity, you know, are there particular training programs like in Baltimore? Because I reckon there's going to be some interest.
Yes. Baltimore is going to have an additional training program starting next year.
Mm-hmm.
The details are being ironed out. It will be hosted at Empowerment Temple with Brother Mike.
All right.
And once we get that up and running, we will be in-house with Brother Billy. You know, there's a few there already.
Mm-hmm.
They are training people through a nationally accredited program. We'll be using the same. And those are good. But you can't discount hands-on training.
Mm-hmm.
You
so
know,
this is interesting. So wait, so the three of you, so you've worked together in some way, shape, or form, or know of each other's work. So Brad, you just mentioned working with that. There's already something going on at Empowerment Temple.
we're developing that.
You're developing that right now, and so
we will be developing the same with Pastor Billy in 2022.
And is it so? It's more hands-on training, you know, for folks in the community to learn more about how these systems work and to hopefully.
That's right. It's more of a hands-on training program, and it will lead to opportunities with employers in the area. You know, in our Baltimore market right now, we have people traveling from out of state to supply labor to large solar projects. I mean, projects that last for several months.
Huh.
You know, people in the local area should have those jobs available to them. And it's just a matter of them getting that training that they need and finding where they are and having those employers know where they are. You know, it's a matchmaking process.
A good example of that, like idea of we leverage our relationship to community and community members, provide space and opportunity for a business like Brad to come in and do training and an introduction to solar panel installation. He gets to hire best in class. We refer out to others. And before, but a solar installation person, technician, worker, those types of jobs and incomes are what Brad mentioned in the very first question you asked him, opportunity. It's opportunity for someone who is otherwise doesn't have an opportunity to have an opportunity. That's the way I look at it. And so I know in my conversations with Brad about the possibility of this happening, that's where my mind goes, is I think about the young adults that are coming out of high school at our local high school or out of our youth programming. How could I connect them so that they could establish themselves now, build the knowledge, get the experience, have a job that's really a poverty breaker, right? Generational poverty breaker. And then eventually, like you said, possibly move out and start their own businesses as solar installers, even if they're, working at, just so much opportunity. And I think we would miss out if we don't take advantage of those types of opportunities. I hope we do it and get it off the ground at Empowerment Temple and City Refuge and across the city, because if we're going to continue to make move to this green economy, there's a lot of job opportunities coming. And as Brad said, I agree, across the construction industry, but and anyone that climbs on a roof and wants to connect solar panels to it, and is willing to put their hands in electrical things deserves a really good living wage or better. So that's just game changer, right? Now we're breaking cycles of poverty for generations of households by giving them these green jobs that are working with their hands that don't necessarily require a college education.
Right.
Not all of those jobs do.
Yeah, and Pastor Billy, I'll add on to that. I mean, I'm a 4th generation electrical contractor. This is the type of knowledge that should keep on going down the generations. We're moving to a very electric world. Everything is electrically connected. To deny that this is not going to produce, beyond living wages for people is, this is the place to be.
Millions of opportunities are here in this particular renewable alternative energy from installation all the way through. And I'm just letting everybody know who's listening, take this seriously. And even if you're an older person and this is a second career, this is a great opportunity. I looked at it and have seen it, and moving forward, that's why I'm a lead green person, and I'm past 65. and I'm going to take Brad's class, and I'm going to pass the exam that's needed to certify you, and I'll be out there hooking up, making connections as we go forward, because it's an opportunity, second, third career opportunities and going forward. And there's an income, and like you said, opportunity for those who are looking for an opportunity.
Yeah, let me
have no fear. It's a change here. There's gold in the hills.
Yeah, let me also add, it's just not installation. There's engineering opportunities, there's management opportunities. We need a whole range of people to make this work.
Right.
You may not be electrically inclined or inclined to install anything mechanically. But, perhaps managerially, you can learn the business from that side, design. You don't
Right.
necessarily need to be an electrical engineer to do design.
Right. And so, but this is the thing. So I'll put it out there because, one of the things that I'm super proud about, I'm proud about many things that Groundswell does, but in particular, the fact is we do the work in the 6 cities that we're working in around the country. We made a dedicated effort, to make sure that we were hiring, and retaining contractors, such as yourself that were, Black owned, minority owned, and women owned, period. Because it's just like we wanted to make sure that that's what we were doing, because historically, there are always winners in any kind of crisis. The climate crisis is no different. And, we saw it in tech, we saw it in the, former industrial revolutions, but they're usually like folks that are certain color, and basically almost exclusively male, right? And so so one of the reasons why we decided to make sure that we were actively, working to create more opportunities for Black owned businesses, minority and women owned businesses was by literally putting our money where our mouth was. And so I'm listening to you all, and it's so clear that this is your passion and you're really interested in using, your position and power to make sure that there's shared community power, as you go forward. But what's standing in the way of this actually becoming normalized, where there's actually a real push toward creating, more opportunities, like real opportunities and very specific strategic ones that will allow, whether it's just the access to information or access to capital, access to networks that will ensure that the benefits of this amazing opportunity that I do believe is gonna happen, and it is already happening, as you just said, Brad. There's like there are more jobs and business opportunities than people can get their hands around. However, hasn't historically, like, we know that there's going to be the losers in this unless we're really mindful. It's not going to help. At least too many of low income communities and residents and Black owned businesses, et cetera. So if you could wave a magic wand, and actually this isn't magic, this is just policy, maybe it's banking industry regulations. What do we need in order to ensure that the goals of creating a more equitable, clean energy future, from a business perspective for the communities that are most often left out of these types of, economic goals, how could that happen?
Targeting with information, there have been more and more people of color within my solar industry, solar battery industry, every year, 10 years over. As opposed to being the only Black person in the conference room, now there's 3 of us. We've really got to target those of us who can participate. We've got a lot of contractors out here. There's a lot of electrical contractors out here, but there's a barrier when you don't have the information to move in a certain direction. So, a lot of people may want information, but they just don't know where to go get it. Knowing how you get in that business is a barrier that we have to break. We have to go after folks where they are and bring them in. In the same way that we give folks opportunity to learn the trade. We have businesses that are able to do this right now. They just need the information to get it done.
Wait, businesses that are able to do, I just want to make sure I understand.
Businesses that are available to do this work, electrical contractors, they need the last piece of the pie. They need to know how they do it and where they can do it.
So there's already skilled people.
Correct.
There's just do they have the access to the information that they need to get to the?
That's right. That's right. When we talk about building up Black people's economies, usually we're talking about workforce development. Workforce development is one thing, but we need business owners in those communities to participate in this. You know, the most powerful thing is to see people where you live
Right.
doing this.
Yep.
You know, kids, it doesn't ring true if they don't see it done. We could talk till we get, you know, till we lose our voice. But if you go out and you don't see this happening in your community, if you don't see it done by people who either look like you or who are from your community, it just, you know, it stays nebulous.
Right.
You get caught up in a mindset of that's something else that just passing me up and I don't have any way to participate.
Yeah. And so excuse me, actually, Brother Mike, so you actually were in government, you know, for 12 years. Do you have any advice on how to sort of like make the, you know, the distance between getting folks, just from a policy perspective, getting folks closer, you know, to that goal that Brad just mentioned, getting people that kind of access? Is it something that the cities can actually do to help?
Of course, you have to. It starts from the top, and our relationship started with the prior mayor, prior mayors, and so we have to continue that. And then, of course, the thing that we're doing today, we need to do this more often. This should be probably an information session at least twice a month, and use the social networking, et cetera. Use Baltimore City's Resiliency Commission, which we are part of. Those are the things. Again, it's still an information. We're in an information age, and we need to get it out there, broadcast in all the mediums. So, for instance, what we're doing today should be done 2 weeks from now, and we should look at how we broadcast these things out. Use that as a broad base. The same way Pastor Billy knows how he does when a brother or sister is taken to and brought in, they get all their email information, phone, all that stuff supposed to go out to them on a day-to-day basis. From where's the next meeting, where's the next networking situation, because you can't say which one will and which one won't. It's the same way as saving. When we have a call to Christ, you put it out there, you speak it to the people, and those that accept the word will come because of what they hear and what they read. So we have to extend this particular format and form and use it to the best we can and continue, not just once every 2 months, whatever. This should be a continuing process. And even if it's recorded, it should go out on a rebroadcast level, et cetera, et cetera. All these things need to be used. And then, of course, I'll do what I do, and I know Pastor Billy will do what he do. We'll keep preaching to the choir until new choir members come on board, and we'll keep preaching to the folks that we see on a day-to-day basis. And some will get it, and some won't. But we won't stop until we see those come into the fold.
So great, thank you for that. So, Pastor Billy, we literally have 30 seconds before we have to close. Do you want to add anything?
I think if we really want to see people of color be entrepreneurs, which is they have to have access to capital. I think that's a critical part, and whatever information in the sense of support and training that the government and we can provide, we the people, right, can provide, I think is critical. I think that is just essential. We need to be intentional. Unfortunately, we got into this situation because there were people making intentional choices that were for the wrong reasons. It's time to make intentional reasons for the right reasons. I
think that is a perfect way to close this. That's all we have time for today. Let's do this for all the right reasons, and that's exactly what you're doing. So I thank you all for being here and for sharing what you did. And we hope that you'll join us again for the next Energy Futures webinar. And I thank you, Brad and Brother Mike and Pastor Billy, for sharing your insight into ways to build community resilience. And we'd also like to give a special thank you to the Bank of America Charitable Foundation, for making the Energy Futures series possible. And as a reminder, a video of this webinar, as a Brother Mike was saying, will be available on Groundswell's Ground Truth site today. And we encourage you to share this information. And if you have any questions, also let us know about that. And anybody who wants to learn about energy equity, please let us know. Thanks for joining. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. And Groundswell, Ground Truth, groundswell.org. Looking forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.